Hello, hello. How's it going, guys? I got some early attendees. Okay, so before, I'm just gonna wait for everybody to come in. So before we start, but thanks for kind of joining in right now, guys. I see there's a couple of you guys in here. Just see. Okay, so this first call, just to kind of let a little bit of you guys know right off the bat, things if you guys are in a little early, is just going to be kind of going over maybe some of the newer templates that we're coming out with, as well as just kind of any of the questions you guys can come up with. I'll be happy to answer. You feel good? Okay. So let me just put my video on here. Okay. Hello, hello. It's not to shave, but you guys aren't coming in here for the looks. Let's just put it that way. So I'd like to kick things off at exactly 1, and we got about 2 minutes till then. So I'm just going to wait a little longer to let as many people as I can join before I just go over things. I'll also share the screen just to kind of go over some of this here. Let's just do this. Okay. So just put notifications off here so I don't get notified about random stuff. Okay. Notifications. All right, should be good. All right, guys, let me know if you guys can see the screen. It says here you should be able to. Just put like a 1 or something in the chat. That way I know you guys are seeing it. Okay, let's see what we got. It's not letting me see the chat here. Okay, there we go. Okay, can you guys see my screen? I mean, it says it's sharing. I'm assuming it is, but just want to confirm. Okay, sure. Thank you very much. Okay, sounds good. Everybody's able to see it. Okay, guys. So again, this kind of first call is just kind of establish things. We're going to be trying to do this on a weekly basis. So this first one will most likely just be kind of covering the new templates that aren't technically, I want to say, released, but obviously in this call, I'll give you guys access to that. Here, let me just close this. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I just had an alarm set to do this call, and then the alarm was over there, so I had to close that. Anyways, so to kick things off, is these calls are going to be kind of on a weekly basis, and they're going to be covering a wide range of topics that you guys might have. Whether it's ManyChat, maybe it's Seller.Tools features, maybe it's kind of the Amazon ecosystem. So that's kind of what these calls are going to be. Usually, one call will be designated to a certain topic. I'm not 100% sure if it'll, we'll try to like mix things up based on what you guys are trying to want us to cover. So your guys' input is obviously very valuable. But yeah, this call here is just going to be probably most likely covering some of the newer templates. And then we're also going to dive into some Q&As that you guys may have. And again, if you guys want to talk about anything in particular, then we can definitely do that. So what's the difference per call? There will be recording. Yeah, there's definitely going to be, this is definitely going to be recorded. And yeah, if you want, you can definitely raise your hand inside the call. Like there's a little button to kind of raise your hand, and I'll be happy to kind of answer any of the questions that come up. This doesn't necessarily need to be about the specific topic, but most likely it would be ideal to just talk about whatever the topic is. But this first call, like I said, is going to be more like kind of establishing the ground rules and just kind of making sure that we go through a workflow of just like, okay, this is what things are about. And like we didn't particularly plan it like to be very specific, like, okay, this is only what we're going to talk about and that's it. Obviously, if you have questions about certain, maybe it's a newer feature or you just want to learn about something else, or you want to know some intricacies about ManyChat, I'll be happy to answer that. Okay, so kind of the rules here, just to kind of start things off. These calls are going to be an hour long, so just kind of bear that in mind. So there's just going to be about an hour. Ideally, if you do have a question, you just want to raise your hand and then I'll try to get to it as fast as I can. But usually that kind of end period of me answering questions will most likely happen at the tail end of the call. Again, this is the first call, so most likely chances are it's going to be a little bit, I don't want to say everywhere, but I'll be answering as we go along, just because the topics aren't engraved in concrete type of thing. Like it's a little bit negotiable what we're actually going to be talking about in this first call. But again, I'd like to go over some of the templates. To just raise your hand, it's actually really simple. I'm not sure if I can actually show you just because I'm sharing my screen, but essentially there's a button and you can raise your hand. I'm not sure if you're able to see this because I'm highlighting it over, you probably can't. But anyways, there's a button inside Zoom at the bottom, I want to say right. And it's just like a little hand. You can raise your hand. And if you have any questions, I'll try to keep an eye on that. That way I can just answer it as need be. You can also post it inside the chat. I'll take a look at that as well. And I'll try to get to those like in a timely manner. Like obviously if I'm explaining something, I can't just, cut off my explanation and then just go straight to your question, but I'll try to get to your questions as quick as I can in a reasonable time. So these calls are just going to be for kind of paid members. Like these are just kind of all the rules here. So again, these calls are going to be exclusive to paid members using Seller.Tools. So anybody that's got a plan with us can come in, learn about things, whatever topic you guys want to talk about. And these are kind of some of the helpful resources that we have here. Again, there's a free mini course. I know that I'm sure there's a lot of you guys that may not have went through this, but this is where Troy kind of goes into kind of ManyChat and how to do the basic functionalities inside there. Definitely some really good stuff there, and you could definitely learn a couple things here and there. Even if you're unless you're extremely experienced in ManyChat, then I would say it might not be the best use of your time, but definitely something worth looking at, just because if you're going to be building out your own flows, or you're going to want to customize your own flows, right? You download our template and you're like, you know what, I want to add this, or I'd like to do that, or whatever it may be, then you're going to want to learn the back end of ManyChat. And it's not as complex as it feels. Like when you kind of get into it, it's actually fairly simple to understand. It just does take a while to kind of get over that learning curve. And then there's also all the free templates here. Like I said, some of the newer templates, you can't technically find them here. They will be updated there, I'm sure, at some point, but they're just really, they're on kind of the new side of things, and they're not there as of right now. And then, of course, there's the email. You can obviously get a hold of support here. You can also get a hold of support by just kind of going, into your Seller.Tools backend, and then kind of communicating through intercom right here, and just chatting with support, or even looking up articles and all that stuff here. So this is just a good way to kind of get a hold of support, and they're just on that lots. Okay, so I see Troy's here. I don't know if you want to jump in and talk a little bit, or do you want me to just start kind of jumping into some templates?
Oh, absolutely. Love to hop in. If you're able, can you turn on my, love to turn on my video, so it's not just,
okay, let me see if I can do that.
If not,
well, let me see. I think I can make host. It seems like I can make you host. I don't know if that'll remove me as all that. I'm not sure if I can.
That's okay then. That's all right. It'll just be my voice.
Okay.
No, excited, and I'm glad you're kicking this off, right, Tyler, with these support calls. We definitely saw an opportunity for all of you, and I see a number of familiar names, and great to see you here and joining us and providing you that additional support to make sure that with strategies like ManyChat, which focus on ranking, reviews, and all the most important things, that you have that elevated support as a paid Seller.Tools user. So definitely value you and want to support you in that way. And Tyler doesn't get to say this, but I do. Tyler is a absolute expert when it comes to using these strategies and tools. Works with has worked with some of you, has worked with some of our clients that have generated tens of millions of dollars in profit on Amazon. So when we get the luxury of saying the best on Amazon, Tyler is a big part of that, of how we use these strategies and how it translates into not only just revenue and top line, it's profit, right? It's we get in business to hopefully at the end of the day have some meat on the bone and have some money that we take back as our margin and profit. And so this is one of the ways that we do it, and we want to support you through these calls, both in the Q&A fashion, and then, as Tyler alluded to, we are building more and more resources, most obviously in the form of ManyChat flows that are going to ensure you have that edge. What are the best doing different? How is that showing up? How do we make that easier for you? And that's ultimately the goal. And then the Q&A, right? Where are you getting those points of where you're hung up, open questions. And this is that forum where you can entrust us with giving that feedback, posing those questions, and we make sure that you're taken care of. So excited to do it. Thanks, Tyler, for kicking it off, taking part, and I think we're ready to go, ready to dive in.
Okay, so before we kind of get into TET flows, does anybody kind of have anything they want to specifically talk about? I just want to try to cover any questions that you guys may have just right off the bat. If nobody's got anything, then I'll just kind of carry on. So let's see, we got chat, tracking cost platform, being across platforms. Okay, so tracking, I'm assuming different costs around different platforms. Is that what, like tracking if let's say you got like 3 or 4 different seller accounts and it's all aggregated into one platform? Is that kind of the question, or when you say tracking across platforms, can you kind of elaborate? So traffic sources. Okay, so into sales into Amazon. So basically want to track which one's converting. Okay, so that's something that you can do definitely through Amazon attributions. Seller.Tools can't really particularly track exactly where the sales are coming from different channels. So that's always like a huge, I want to say not a problem, but pain point that sellers have is like, if I'm driving external traffic to my Amazon listing, which traffic source is actually converting? And unfortunately, at least here at Seller.Tools, we can't particularly track that. It's something that you have to track on kind of Amazon side. So something I would definitely advise looking into is Amazon attributions. I mean, outside of traffic like ManyChat specifically. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like, so if you're driving traffic from like YouTube, for example, which is like a really, really good one, I would say you're going to need to look into Amazon attributions. The only way to get that is through brand registry, and then you have to apply to Amazon attributions. And that's kind of the only way you're really able to really track your sales. You could also do Amazon affiliates, which is kind of like most people don't particularly like to do that, because I think, I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on this, but I think it's against TOS to actually have an affiliate link to your own product. I'm not sure if you can touch on that a little bit, Troy. Do you know if it's against TOS? I'm pretty sure it's not, but I've heard somewhere saying like it is. So that's why most sellers don't actually use affiliate links.
Yeah, my understanding, based on the TOS and any of the affiliate language, is that it's not explicitly. It's been more forums and subjective interpretation. So that's to say, there's nothing that I've seen that explicitly says you can't. But there's other ways of doing this too. So if you're talking about traffic into ManyChat or how that translates into sales, and obviously one of the ways that we monitor that journey, and we get some of you alluded to, Tyler, the Amazon attribution. We also integrate directly with ZonTracker through our API, to where if those sales if Facebook is in the equation, through our two tools integrating, you can have that visibility and track those conversions for any kind of Facebook related activity. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. But yeah, that's when it comes to Facebook and ManyChat in particular.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the strategies too that we focus on is that, yeah, we'll welcome that traffic into ManyChat, own the customer journey, but then we'll drive that traffic to an external source, which is another kind of more advanced strategy, one that Tyler has had a heavy hand in the form of social link laundering. But obviously, you know where you're directing that traffic, and you can tag it, have that attribution once it's in ManyChat, right? Um, so it really is how those, how these resources, the interplay with a lot of them.
Yeah. So in kind of short, because I know Troy likes to he likes to have a long-winded answer. He's a good politician, I tell you. But in short, you can't really like track, especially if it's coming from like Instagram or YouTube, or maybe other kind of variety of other traffic sources. So it really, you got two options. You got the Amazon affiliate link, right? And again, I don't like, you'd have to do your own research into how um, TOS compliant that is to actually use an affiliate link on your own products. And then you got Amazon attributions, which is the preferred method into tracking kind of sales coming in through different platforms.
Well,
Okay, so
one last point I'd make on that too, Tyler. And if we simplify this, let's say you own those traffic sources and you're using a ref URL, obviously you can use a vanity URL, a link shortener, and there's your attribution too. So I know we're trying to capture every use case.
yeah,
But
but you can't track the actual sales metric, which is the big thing. Like I've done
right.
this too in the past with like, YouTube videos, and you put like a Pixify link, and then you're able to track the clicks, but you're not able to track the sales, which is obviously a good metric to have. So there's only really two methods I know: Amazon attributions, Amazon affiliates, because again, you need Amazon to tell you like, hey, sales are coming in here. And again, most people, the sellers I've talked to, they don't particularly want to do the Amazon affiliates. And then some of them do have Amazon attribution, which is obviously a huge plus. But not everybody has capabilities doing that. Anyway, so I don't want to get too hung up on that question. I think we've kind of answered it fairly well. So the next one I see here is ManyChat is basically no longer useful for rebates. How true is that? I would say that's fairly false. Um, I'd say things are definitely changing, but like you can still launch very effectively through rebates. I know sellers that are literally doing hundreds, 200 to 300 rebates a day. Lately, he's slowed down a little bit just because he's not launching as many products now. But there's so many people, and I'm sure Troy can talk on this as well, because he gets to see kind of the back end of how many people are using the wallet. So there's a lot of people still using rebates in order to kind of rank and then get that initial review base going. So I would say it's fairly false that rebates are no longer a viable option to launch. But is it changing? Is it not as effective as it used to be? I'd say yes, there is some, dividends into that. That is a factor. Like it's search find buy is not as potent as it used to be. And I would say yes to that. I think it can be. It depends on your kind of traffic source and the buyer quality, which is maybe something we can get into in another time. So the next question here, big one for us, is audience into the flows. Love to hear.
Tyler, can and I hate to keep
Yeah,
butting in,
just
but I
no,
think
it's
it's
fine.
such a
You can
strong,
answer.
such a strong question, and I think it's really pertinent because the truth is that ManyChat, we were really struggling really since you guys may have heard me mention this. I feel like I might be a broken record when I've talked about it on podcasts. Is around the time of the U.S. elections when Facebook was very sensitive, and whether it was bot detection, whether it was interpretation of their own policies, that adversely impacted ManyChat, and that lasted for a good 5 or 6 months. And some of our biggest clients and biggest brands were starting to slow down because they didn't want page bans, and they didn't, weren't comfortable with their own interpretations of tagging, and that impacted their rebate strategies. And I would say probably about three months ago, there was a switch that flipped, and they came back online hard. And they're sort of like our test. It's like, okay, when they go from zero to $250,000 in a month in processing rebates, we sort of get to know, okay, those of our clients that are maybe doing 20 to 25,000 a month, they should feel pretty safe because the volume is there, the test has been made, and it really validates ManyChat rebates at scale, and in the safety and the usefulness as well. So yeah, on the whole, things have really come back online and very aggressively. So that's really been the landscape, as we've seen some of some of our really strong users sort of say, okay, ManyChat is working very effectively, but they also prioritize, list building, that they view that as a huge asset. They need to be able to reliably rank. They can't do, seasonal ranking. They have to always be ranking because they're in hyper competitive spaces too. But what that tells us, and when I think about my own brands, you always watch what those that are having to do and fight the hardest fight. What are they doing? They're coming back on ManyChat. They're starting to really leverage it at scale. And yeah, still using rebates to great effect.
Awesome. That's a good answer. So I basically got two questions here, but they're very similar to each other. And basically, what is kind of the better way of getting traffic other than Facebook ads? So there's two questions, basically asking them more or less the same thing. And I would say one of the best ways to get traffic, guys, and this is something you should definitely try to investigate and do right now, because it's going to pay dividends later down the line, just because of how much scale there's going to be, especially with ManyChat opening up with Instagram. So essentially is getting influencers to test out your product, and then maybe having them post like, hey, XYZ page, right? Whatever your page is, insert page name here, is going to be launching a rebate giveaway, and they're giving away, let's say 100 units or whatever, X amount of units, right? And then having a link, which would be like a ref URL, and it goes straight to your bot, or like it's a URL shortener, and then that shortener is connected to a ref URL, and then it kicks off your flow. Really gathering a list like that and running giveaways like that is so much better than just doing it through a Facebook ad. It does take a lot more work. Like, I'm not going to pretend like this is something that's done in an afternoon, right? Because you got to set up an Instagram account, you got to DM people, you got to get rejected a whole bunch, you got to kind of figure things out, especially if it's a brand new account. Most people on Instagram will kind of, like, if they get a random DM, chances are that maybe they won't even notice it, but if they do notice it, they'll take a look at your profile. Like, that's the next kind of vetting check is for these Instagram influencers. They're going to say, okay, this person doesn't, it looks fake, right? Because you have to understand, like, you come at it from the user's perspective or the influencer's perspective, and they say, oh, this looks like a spam account, right? Because it does, we're in the ecosystem of just doing these rebates. So to us, it's very normal, but to a regular person that may not be, interacting with sellers that much, it seems very scammy. So you really have to build trust. And that's why having a good profile, maybe having other social proof metrics, is just going to help you out tremendously. But using Instagram influencers to kind of kick things off, or even just using an individual person, right? Like, maybe you message a whole bunch of people and you say, hey, we're doing a rebate giveaway about XYZ. We're looking for feedback, blah, 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 blah. You do the back and forth. I forget his name, and I'm terrible with names, but this one person, and I was in the call with him, he says they give them the mother-in-law experience, which I kind of resonated with me, because it's like, you want to treat them very well. And it's not just, oh, here's a link, here's my bot, leave me alone. It's like, you kind of have to do a little bit of back and forth, maybe explain yourself why you're doing it, and then maybe then you give them a link, and you can automate the process of just issuing the rebates through Seller.Tools. But essentially, you're going to be building up an audience through doing that, and you do it enough, it just gets easier and easier as you go along. Especially, ManyChat is slowly releasing, I should say Facebook, because we see ManyChat, but really they're waiting on Facebook and so on. But it's going to be, at some point, there's going to be flows to automate the process through Instagram. Right now, it's just not available, just because there are some limitations through connecting an account. But down the line, this is going to be opened up, and it's going to open up the marketplace to a whole bunch of new users that are actually going to be quality, right? Like, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, in this call, Facebook ads is becoming very difficult to run rebate offers through, just because of the targeting and how the algorithm is optimized to just get as many clicks as possible. And unfortunately, the people that click these type of advertisings they're not the ideal buyer. Maybe they're deal seekers, they could be scammers. Obviously, you could be very focused on your targeting, you can avoid those people, and then the flows obviously have some level of protection as well with the blacklist and so on. But ideally, you want to get quality buyers, just because quality buyers literally correlates to more rankings and higher chances that the reviews that they post, if they post any, will stick long term. So really focus on kind of traffic sources. The main one I would say is Instagram, and then you can look at other platforms. I know Troy had mentioned Google advertising, right? You could do display ads. I haven't had that much experience with that one, but that is kind of an avenue you can take a look at. It does look a little scammy. You have to understand, like, if you come at it from the user's perspective, they see an advertising, they say, oh, free product, like, oh, okay, this is just another scam thing, right? Um, so that's why if you at least DM somebody through Instagram and you're a real person, or maybe, your page is legitimate, it's got a lot of followers, it's got this, it's got some social proof on it already, it just looks so much more real, and they're able to kind of trust you a little bit more. And then as you build these relationships with more and more influencers, they can tell their friends, and then their friends say, and it just grows from there. It makes things a lot easier. So I would say where I would put energy and time into, if you're really trying to, like, build your brand and get like more of a following, and launch review, like launch slash get reviews and rank, focus on Instagram. Even though you might not particularly love the platform, I know I'm not a huge fan. I'm trying to get into it a little bit myself, and understanding it a little bit more, just because I'm not a huge social media guy. But just really understand it and try to look at things through kind of the user's lens, which is something that as sellers we tend to forget. We just tend to want to automate as much as we can, but that's not always the best way of going about things. Do you want to jump in, Troy, or is that was?
No, I think that was a great answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jocelyn, currently trying to use Fiverr to get an IG list. Okay, yeah, it's just, yeah, I know we had spoke about that. It's that's not a terrible idea, is to try to maybe outsource some of the kind of back and forth, just because it does take a lot of time. Um, Especially if you have less time and you have more money, it makes sense. But if your brand is maybe, maybe you're a newer seller and you don't have as much, you have more time, but you don't have money, then it would make sense for you to do all the DMing. But if you have less time and a lot of money, then that makes sense to maybe hire this out. So it's obviously situational on what you should do. Both options are viable. Okay, I got us thinking. So sorry about this, guys. I'm just kind of reading things here. Okay, nice. Okay, so it seems like I think I've essentially covered all the questions, I believe, here. One of them was asking about two-step URLs as well as search, find, buy, and kind of what would the recommendation be there. Now, in terms of search, find, buy, and two-step URLs, I would let me see, there's another question. I would definitely say there's links that work more effective than others. Hidden keyword is still a fairly good one. Search, find, buy will still give you a lot of weight, especially if the user has a good buyer account. Like that's probably the most important metric, other than, like, where the traffic is coming from and so on. You can launder your links through, like, maybe YouTube, like tell them go to YouTube, and then they go to YouTube, and then inside the YouTube video, like, it's what I call a dummy video, you essentially have a link, maybe it's like a two-step link or something like that. They click it, and then it sends them to Amazon, and then the traffic appears like it's coming from YouTube, which it is, but anyways, they coming from YouTube, and Amazon gives more weight to traffic sources like that. So that is one way. Like, obviously that takes a lot more editing inside the flows to do that, but the metric you would really want to focus on, like, other than just like making a fancy link, is your buyer quality. Like that's probably the most important one. You can have the fanciest link in the world, but realistically the most important metric is the buyer quality. So again, if you're doing Instagram, people, and the people that are the most skeptical about rebates and, like, its legitimacy, are probably the most valuable, because they're not the ones doing rebates on a day in day out type of basis. So again, there's a whole bunch of people on Instagram. I don't know the actual numbers, but I believe it's, just millions upon millions of people just on there daily. And if you're able to just figure out your target audience, maybe you're selling camping stuff, and you start looking up hashtag camping or something like that, and you see there's some posts and you see some interactions, and then you maybe interact with a person on a one-on-one basis, saying, like, hey, I run a small Amazon brand. We'd really like it if you took the time to maybe test one of our products. Let us know what you think. Blah 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 blah. We're willing to reimburse you. Blah 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 blah. Right? Like, you give them kind of the mother law and experience, and you just do that back and forth. Obviously, you can copy paste some stuff, so that way you're not constantly DMing them unique stuff every single time. And then later on, maybe in the message, you could say, okay, here's a link to the bot that's going to automate everything, so that way it's easier for both of us. And that's a strategy I would definitely advise, is really focus more on the quality of the buyers than, this fancy links that you can acquire over time, of just doing these things. Like, instead of a two-step URL, search find by, all these other things. Obviously, search find by is probably one of the best ranking methods just still right now. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to add anything there, Troy.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up some really great points there. Just to reinforce them in terms of the concept of social link laundering. It is a more advanced strategy, and by that I mean it sounds like a lot. And this is again something that Tyler has done a great job of really sharing with sellers as an innovation, is directing traffic to another source before you direct them to purchase ultimately. Because then that gives Amazon a variety of signals of, you have to think of Amazon like as, sitting there waiting for customers through, what they're used to seeing, a variety of traffic sources. And by using ManyChat, we can recreate that. We can have them come from YouTube. We can have them come from Pinterest, or any other channel that we would like, because we own that customer journey. I would reinforce what we see time and time again is Google properties, of which YouTube is a part of, being really effective when it comes to laundering those links. So even though it sounds like a lot of, I've got to put up a video and then I've got to add a description, and it is worth it to take that time, because it really levels up the fact that instead of, I think we have another question in regards to PPC, but I always bring this up relative to PPC, of instead of putting a billboard on Amazon, which is little to no control, the point that Tyler brought up in terms of customer quality, you have no idea. You sort of assume because they're on Amazon that they may be higher quality, but ManyChat gives you that control, the ability to then direct that traffic, guide it before you realize that optimized keyword driven sale. So I would also throw in there auto SFB. It's another strategy I developed. Now it seems like it's been some time ago, but it helps to use for optimized links when you are outside page 2 and even maybe page 3, thinking about the customer experience there for your keyword, where you can use optimized links, kind of catch up to get to search, find, buy, and ready, and then use search, find, buy. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out too. But yeah, those are really strong points that you made. I want to just reinforce those.
Yeah, so just to kind of add on, and then I'll answer this question right after. So with search find by, you can actually, even if you're not ranking high enough, you can actually just do search find by the entire time. What you do, unless you're not indexed, which obviously you'd have to wait, but what you do is you just put your main keyword in, and then you add brand name at the end. So whatever your brand name is, like golden tree or whatever, boom, you add golden tree at the end, like whatever your keyword is, and then you add that branded name at the end. And what that'll do is it'll still give attributions to kind of the main keyword as well as your brand name, and basically your keyword will rank very high because they're looking up this plus your brand name, so it gives attributions to whatever keywords are in there. And essentially, once you get to a certain level, then you can remove the brand name, and that way you're doing search find by throughout the giveaway and not just at the start, because you want to use like hit it like a hidden keyword or two-step or whatever it may be in order to get to the page like 2 or 1 or whatever it may be on that. So you can technically do search find by all the way through. And then there's a question here saying, would you use PPC and search find by in order to kind of increase your PPC and your organic kind of positions at once? And I would say that's definitely a good strategy. I haven't done it that much, I'll be honest, just because it's like you're already kind of spending money to acquire the customer, and mainly most people just want to rank organically. But that is a really good strategy, because you're not only going to kind of rank organically, but you're also going to rank on your PPC. Your PPC will most likely get more, boost, because it'll see, oh, this is had a high click-through rate, high conversion rate. This is great, because Amazon does actually look at those kind of metrics. It's not all about like how much you're bidding and all this stuff. Obviously, that plays in their auctions, but they're also looking at like your conversion rate, your click-through rate compared to the other competitors in the page. So if you're, outpacing them just on everything basically, or at least a couple of different variety, like huge metrics, then they're going to position you higher on your PPC, and then organic should also kind of correlate to your PPC. But I would say if you're telling them to click your PPC, so your sponsored posts, chances are it's going to give more lift to your actual sponsor posts and less to your organic. It still give you organic boosting as well, just because like there's attribution there as well. But I don't think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of attribution. Again, I can't, a lot of the stuff that like the theoretical, you can't really prove, at least not scientifically, just because, Amazon is a fairly big black box compared to just like Google. I feel like there's more information about Google than there is Amazon. And most sellers aren't particularly scientific about things. They just like, oh, I did this and this worked, so this must be why this worked. But it's like there are so many different variables of why that happened. It's not just I did 2 rebates and then I ranked number 1, so that means 2 rebates is all you need to do. It's like, well, maybe Amazon, like maybe you had the keyword in your title, maybe there was a bunch of customers that were searching that and they actually, your product or your offer was the best one, so they clicked it and then that raised you up. It's not always like cause correlation, so it's very difficult to be scientific in terms of just Amazon algorithms. It's more like sellers kind of coming together. They say, okay, this has been working, and then when we notice a lot of similarities, then it's like, okay, this must be something we're looking at. And then you also use common sense too, like how the algorithm would work. Um, so yeah, I would say it's not a bad idea, but it's not something I've done too much. Is using PPC with Search Find Buy. Okay, thank you. Oh, there's Troy. Put that in there. Okay, so I
Yeah,
think
I
we're
just
all caught up.
Tyler, I just added that, and I thought it would be a good resource, and I'm sure we'll get in the habit of this too, of dropping any other links or
Mhm.
best resources based on some of the questions. I think I put together a detailed article towards the beginning of this year that outlined what we found to be the most impactful ranking factors. And I really tried to sum this up. One of the things that you guys may notice if you look at some of my old articles, and this is a little bit hush hush, but I mean, this is the beauty of having these close calls with you guys, is Amazon's popularity score. They actually used to make this visible. There was accountabilities. There's how to put this. That information has to be made available, and it was to a certain point, and obviously now it's not as openly disclosed. But what you'll see, and I forget which article I have it in, but I actually snapshotted a picture of some of the popularity score metrics and the weighting of specific elements. And it is in the range of like 220 factors that make up ranking on Amazon. And, there are things that, again, we all know and that have been more historical, but then have ebbed and flowed. Things like add to carts, things like add to wish lists, different page interactions ultimately. And you'll find that in this article that I've drafted as well. So, like I said, ultimately that aims to kind of sum up the main 4 or 5 factors. But I think, MJ, to your question, I think it will do a better job of sort of, if you take those factors and then you think about something like ManyChat, it really, the two mesh together nicely, where it is all about owning the customer journey, having them go through external traffic, having a better sense of their buyer quality. Another, I hate to drop a teaser here, but buyer quality is something that we are working on, and you will expect some features from us when it comes to answering that sort of that $1 million question of, how can I know the quality of this customer? Because that will let you know if you want to continue to provide offers to them, to keep them on your list, all those sorts of things. So more information to come there. But as you can bet, when we've identified what the ranking factors are, that's where the feature set is going for Seller.Tools. But it's good to really know those. And yeah, that's my long reinforcement, I think, of what I think is a really great resource.
Yeah. So Jocelyn says, can you convince the seller to do product inserts? I'm going to say no. Just because the thing with inserts is your business kind of has to be to a certain level. Like if you're a beginner, chances are this isn't something that's on your mind just right off the bat, even though it is really a big, kind of business asset, to build a list. But the thing is, you also entice them with something, whether it be like a free ebook, maybe a free product, maybe a warranty. And then there are some other ideas. But it's really difficult to convince somebody, hey, you should do this, and this is why. It's more like if you can say, hey, these are the reasons you should consider it, and then they would make that decision for themselves. I don't think you're going to be too successful in trying to convince people to use inserts, just because again, it might not be the perfect time to do it in their business, right? Maybe they think hey, we should just focus on getting more rank reviews. Maybe we should focus on launching products. Never mind these little insert cards. But obviously, if they're at a certain level in their business where they've got maybe a couple hero products and they're doing really well, and they're like, you know what, I'd love to see an insert in that one and this one, and then we start acquiring a list. Because if you're only making like, let's say 10 or so sales every day on a specific product, having an insert will help you like acquire a list, but it's like, is your energy more better utilized over trying to make an insert card, or is it better utilized trying to maybe rank a new product or launch a new, rank said product or launch a new product, right? So you kind of have to weigh it like that. And some sellers don't really want to put in the investment needed to actually have an insert and maybe the ongoing costs of doing an insert. So I wouldn't try convincing anybody to do an insert. You can maybe give them ideas and stuff, but that's essentially it in terms of inserts. Okay, I think we're pretty much good on questions. I don't know if I missed any, but I do want to kind of cover the template side. So this is something I'm very excited to kind of announce. We decided to kind of name these the 5.0 ones, and we're not going to update, let's say, the 4.0 ones. So the ones that are currently kind of on the list, these ones here are kind of, I would say, a little bit separate just because the builds are they're similar, but they're different from each other to a significant amount. So I didn't want to just update that and be like, okay, well, there you go. This is now the new one. So this one here, and there's a lot more than one. Let me just kind of show you guys here. Okay, so there's essentially 5 versions as of right now. There most likely will be more later down the line, but there's pick a reward. So that's just like the 100 different gift cards they can gotta pick, like 100 plus different gift cards they can pick from. The Venmo version, PayPal version, Visa version, and then options version. So the options version is actually the user gets to pick their payment preference. So if they want to pick, Amazon gift cards, they could do that. If they want to pick PayPal, they could do that. If they want to do Visa, so on, right? They get to pick their payment preference. Of course, you can add this to your heart's content and limit the options they can pick from. So if you want to say remove PayPal, then you can do that, or remove Amazon gift cards, you could do that. And essentially the flow, it just kind of, this is what the template looks like. And I could drop a link to this inside the chat just so that way you guys have it. It is ready as of right now, and there is going to be a video tied to it. Let me just see if I can get this in the chat here. It's being all buggy. So the chat, okay. So all parties, okay. So sorry about that. So this is a link to the template right here. And I just recorded literally today the kind of overview video going over how to edit this. The good news is in this call, I'll go over kind of the bigger steps you need to do. And then this overview link will most likely be updated today, most likely after this call. But essentially what you do is you hit install, you find the right page to install it at, and then you finish the installation. I'm not going to go over kind of that process just because that's kind of fairly tedious and then we don't have too much time. So I'm not going to waste your guys' time here. The next process is actually editing the flows, and it'll come in like a folder like this, very similar to like this. So let me just push this inside over here. So essentially, what the big things you guys need to do with this template, you actually don't need to edit anything inside Flow Builder. All you need to really do is edit things from the outside. So you edit the bot fields, right, to match whatever values you need to have. Then you need to change their names to be unique to your product. And you also want to change the purchase tag. In the video, I do cover that. I'll just cover it fairly quickly right now. So you would go settings, then fields, then bot fields. And then in most cases, you're going to want to hit Control F, and then you'd hit product name. And they would find the product name for you. I've already changed the field, so it's not going to go under that. And I changed it to Seller.Tools 1. So essentially, that's what I would consider the product name. Again, this is just a test. So you would name that all these fields to a unique ID, so that way they're their own thing for that specific product. And then you want to do the same thing with the purchase tag, which is right here. And again, that's found in the settings, and then right under fields, it's tags. Okay, so, and then also you would want to make sure the API keys are connected properly, something I'm sure most of you guys know. And you could find that in the settings, apps, and then you would go Seller.Tools. and then you'd see your keys right here. Obviously, I don't actually have keys here, but you would make sure yours, like they come like dangly like this, where it's a bunch of numbers and dots and so on. So it would look something like that. Okay, now to actually go inside Flow Builder and just kind of walk you through what this looks like. And the reason why this one is a little bit different because I've edited it to be a demo bot. So it's going to be a little disconnected and I don't want to say dilapidated, but a little bit dilapidated just because I did edit this to be a demo bot. So that way you guys can come in here and interact with it. So all the logic is actually disconnected from the bot, but when you would do install the template, the logic is all connected to it. So essentially the way this bot starts off is like, it says, okay, similar to the exact kind of structure of the other templates. Let me actually just do a bird's eye view. One thing you're going to notice a lot in the newer builds is there are kind of three different message types. There's instructions, optional steps, and notes. Instructions is something you need to do. Optional step is something you can do or you can't do. Like you get to pick whether or not you want to change it. And then notes is something for you to just consider. So anytime you see Seller.Tools action step, it's instructions, and that's mainly just to say, hey, make sure your API key is connected properly and that it's connected to the right group. So if you have multiple groups, and you can figure that out by going into settings, apps, Seller.Tools, and then if you have multiple marketplaces, say you have Canada, US, and Australia, and so on, you can have different groups. So if you have more than one group, then you'd make sure that whatever group that you want to have it at is connected properly. Most sellers only have one group. There's only like the really big sellers that have like, many different accounts. So they got like, let's say like 3 or 4 different seller accounts, and you have to make sure that you're checking more than one group. So I'm hoping that made sense. I know I'm going pretty fast just because we don't have a tremendous amount of time. So I'm trying to cover as much as I can with a short period of time I got. Okay, so other than that, all these kind of notes here are just to let you know. So when you do see these newer templates, I definitely advise just taking a look at kind of all the notes and reading them. I know it might seem like a long, daunting task, but it's a lot of them are repeated notes, so you can just kind of see it and be like really quickly go over it, and it wouldn't take you too much time. So this one right here is kind of the multiple payment variation. So you're going to see a lot of conditions here. Let me just cover the one right here. So this one right here is basically to make sure that they haven't already purchased the product or they're not in the pending rebate phase. The pending rebate phase is essentially when they're in that limbo phase of they've ordered a product and they've given their order ID and it's not yet shipped, but it's still kind of pending. And that's what I call the kind of pending phase. So they actually get a tag that says, okay, they're in the pending phase and they can't go into another flow or another offer, or even this flow right here, even the same flow, because it's going to tell them like, hey, you're still pending. And the reasoning for that is just because if you're running multiple different giveaways at once, you're able to not have it interfere with each other, because the old version made it so essentially the fields would interfere with each other and it could cause problems down the line. And obviously we want to mitigate any kind of problems that you can see on your end. So this one here is just kind of protections to make sure people they don't double dip either. That's another reason why this is on here, so they don't get 2 rebates for one order number. And then the counter, I mean, that one's fairly straightforward, just making sure that you don't give away more than your target amount. So let's carry on. So the multiple payment version, this is where kind of the magic happens right here, where you can actually pick what version you want them to be able to pick from. So if you say, okay, I don't want them to be able to pick Amazon gift cards, right? Or whatever reason you're saying, I don't want that. So what you could do is you can actually, let me just edit the flow and I'll just kind of show you. I won't actually publish the changes, but I'll just show you quickly how you could do that. You would just take this, right? And then you would just delete this, right? And you could just simply click it and then hit delete. And then you would hit publish. I'm not actually going to do that. So just revert back to publications. And essentially that would remove that payment version. And you would do it on the 2 messages that you have right here. So there's one that lets them know what version would they like. And then the other one lets them know what pick a reward is, because a lot of people don't actually know what pick a reward is. So there's a button that says, what is pick a reward? And then of course that message kind of notifies them, okay, this is what it is. And then it asks them kind of the same question, what is your preference? And then based on their preference, it goes here, it asks for either their email or their phone number, right? So if they picked Venmo as their preference, you'd need their phone number. So it asks for that. Then it goes up the line over here. It checks the counter value again, just to make sure, well, it checks the blacklist first to make sure that this information isn't on the blacklist. Then it goes into the counter to make sure that there are still units available. And again, the reasoning why this is here more than once in the old version, it wasn't like that, is just to make sure that if individuals maybe stopped at whatever point, like let's say they started the flow, they got right here to this message to pick a preference, and then they had to go do something really fast, or maybe, whatever, they got caught up, life happens type of this situation. And then over the course of the day, you hit your limit, and then there's say like the 5 people that said, okay, I'm ready to participate this in it again, and then they start going through the flow, and that's when you start hitting more than your ideal target. So that's why I have the counter more than once, so it minimizes that, basically, to all the extent there. Then the last, well, maybe not the last. Then the next portion is it actually goes through kind of the finding method. And again, at some point, it's not as of right now, but at some point I plan on updating the search, find, buy kind of flow, as well as the link distribution flow. And I'll make it so you can basically grab that template, you copy all the ingredients or the nodes inside there, and you would paste it here. And I purposely made room here so you can do that. And then just connect that piece. And then that way you're able to use search, find, buy here. You can, of course, edit the messages here to just like kind of delete this and then add in your search, find, buy, say, okay, find the product with this search term. Here's what it looks like. Here's the price, which price matches the product that you picked, just to make sure that they pick the right one. So I don't know if, okay, do you want me to keep kind of going into this, Troy, or do you want me to, because I know that the time, at least time is going to be a little restricting here. So let me see what people are saying here.
I do want to just make sure that the link was shared through. If you guys can just share confirmation that you do have access to this flow, that's definitely the biggest thing too, as a free resource that's fully built out, that you've got that. Cool. Jocelyn, Sydney, thank you guys for confirming. I want to make sure that they have it in hand. What you will notice, so you can keep an eye on it, is that Tyler will be adding that video link too. And this is not publicly available. So I do hope you guys enjoy sort of seeing some of the optimization steps that that Tyler has added into this process. And that continues to be the goal, is just refine more best practices as we see things pop up. How can things run more optimally for you as the runners of your ManyChat flows, but then also the customer experience side too, where if you give them just a little bit more control, more options, you can kind of keep them happy while keeping everything fully automated.
Yep. I don't know if the best use of our time is to go through the entire, I know I was just kind of going through it there, but I don't know if the best use of our time is to just kind of go over all of this, because I do go over that through the overview video, and the overview video is roughly, I want to say 50 minutes. So it is a good amount of time just kind of going over best practices, how to install, how to edit, what every single, well, maybe not every single thing, but what the majority of these kind of nodes are for and what their task is. So I don't think it's the best use to just kind of go over this. Like I said, I do have multiple variations here, so I could send kind of the links for all of these. And the one video is actually it's essentially one video covering the multiple versions, but it's going to cover all of these as well, because the build structure is basically identical. The only difference, obviously, between multiple options, like payment options, is that they don't get to pick their payment options with PayPal, for example. So that part is a little bit more condensed because the flow is smaller. It doesn't have to ask them, hey, what's your preference? Okay, what's your email next? And then so on. But other than that, like, the core of it is identical. So I didn't make an individual video for every single one, because I would be basically talking about the same thing over and over and over again. So I have one video, and I'm going to be putting them inside all the flows inside kind of the video. You could see right here, there's a little, view template video presentation. And again, I will update that, like right here. I have to update the link right here, and the bot demo, I have to update that as well. That's something that'll most likely happen after this call. I just got kind of tied up with a lot of other things. But yeah, this is something that's kind of going to be available later down the line. Obviously, you guys have some fairly early access just because nobody else has access to this, and you guys could take a look, explore around, see, whether or not this is going to match your goals.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I think one thing I would definitely like to ask the audience is kind of like, what do you guys want to see kind of from our side, maybe from like a template side or maybe a feature side, something like that. What would you guys like to see from us? Because obviously your input is extremely important. So let's see what we get. Strategies. Okay.
Let me ask. I think it's a great point. MJ, does giving you the flows, that is that the best way? And obviously we can kind of break it down, but is that was this useful when it comes to sharing strategies? Cool. Yes. Yes. Okay. Maybe show. Wow. I feel like I'm not in the dark. Okay. Cool. Wondering. Okay. Awesome. Good feedback. Because we want to know, because I know the spirit of Tyler's question is we want to structure these to where you have the most value. Because this isn't publicly available. We want to make it just for you guys that are already using these tools and using, yes, what we know, what Tyler knows too. But when we discuss those types of things like strategies, is something like a ManyChat flow that has everything already integrated, is that the best takeaway? Is it just raw information? I'm always hesitant to do just straight content because that's everywhere and that can be a lot of noise, where I feel like if we can develop, and hand off things like these integrated flows, especially if you guys have that really great knowledge, then it's, we can measure things up and running in hours instead of synthesizing content and wondering if it's the same thing everybody's consuming and like, where's the point of difference, right? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, best type of strategy. So okay, we could definitely look into kind of strategies. I know maybe hopefully down the line we can get some kind of case studies like, okay, this is what we did. This is kind of the breakdown of it. And maybe we'll explore the whole having a case study of kind of the Instagram side of things and DMing. So I think I kind of understand what kind of the big takeaways, just like kind of the strategies, how to do certain things, and then what resources for doing X thing was. So flows are obviously a good thing. Okay, I guess the big thing clients are struggling with is that ManyChat is dead because Facebook ads aren't working as well.
Gotcha. Yep, those are great points. And we've heard that feedback too. I mean, so Facebook ads, I'm not in love with when it comes to our own brands. We are using post-purchase strategies. We may use some Google ads. So Facebook ads doesn't make up the majority. And so opening up some of those, it obviously doesn't negate if they're looking at, landing pages or web-based bots. Those have their shortcomings too, right? Because then you don't fully own the journey. You assume they're going to land there and then they're going to stay there. And, if you're going to end up text messaging them, you're back in ManyChat anyway. So it's sort of like, it's more of a potential dead end than it is a journey ownership in the same way that ManyChat is. That's why we're really focusing on it. But post-purchase is, it's so big. I know we touched on it just briefly, but when it comes to inserts and not just free gift, we do have free gift flows, we have warranty flows, we have registration flows. So you don't have to think about it just being, oh, here's a free gift and I have to factor in a gift. It's just having somebody opt in. And one of the future support calls, we can dive into internal launches, ways of using your list. That is very important. It's often overlooked because what you can fall prey to is just being transactional, where it's okay, somebody buys and then you never see them again, you never hear from them again. And that's an underutilization of Seller.Tools, because when you verify an order, all of a sudden you've got a customer's name, you have their email address, or excuse me, you have their address in the flow to deliver the rebate. We have the email. So if you're up against a competitor who's using PPC and they have a nameless, faceless customer and you have all of that information, you can bet that's an advantage that you have. And we want to make sure that we break down how to exploit that. That's one of those inflection points where, you're at 10 and your competitors are just throwing a ton of money at PPC as it's getting more and more costly. So anyways, I'm gonna get off my sandbox, but I think that's great feedback for where we can go and take more topics, because ManyChat's coming on. It's coming on strong. It really is, and I think we see a lot of people looking at landing pages, and it sort of feels like a slightly better version of landing pages, which are now decade-old, strategies, versus all of the cool things that we can do with ManyChat.
Okay, so now there's
You want to tackle this last one, Tyler?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think, I mean, I'm really biased just because I spend so much time in ManyChat. So I think it's definitely worth, putting a lot of energy into just, building out really good templates, building out good flows, really, making the customer journey as good as you can, or as the best it can be, really, with ManyChat and Messenger, and you got SMS. Now you're gonna have Instagram soon. I know they do experience glitches. Sometimes buttons don't appear. Sometimes, they have whatever. I mean, if you've been in the space long enough, I'm sure you insert problem here, and they've had it essentially. But I think it's one of those platforms that's extremely difficult to beat. Yes, you can have landing pages, but like Troy said, you can't control the customer journey. You can't do as many things. Like, one of the big things that I do with a lot of the big clients that I work with is doing internal giveaways, having footer flows, right? So like flows that literally say, hey, we're still looking for more product testers. Would you like to refer a friend? And you would be extremely surprised. Like, I don't think you would be that surprised actually, but there's the amount of free users you get from doing that is just, it's unreal. But you can't really do that as much with a landing page type of bot, because you can't just optimize for it. You can't see what's working, what's not working. At least in ManyChat, like, you can literally do an A/B split test, extremely simple. Just like, okay, here's a randomizer, 50%, 50%, which one converts better? Um, and then the amount of capabilities. Like, I think one of the things that a lot of, I want to say, the ManyChat community, and you guys are in this as well, we're not really using it to its full capability. Like, I've seen a lot of different bots, and I've seen a lot of big clients, like a lot, like they're just massive. And I would say they're at like, 10%, like maybe 40% of like their actual capability they can be using things for. Like, they have audiences the size of like a couple of thousand, like hundreds of thousands, or, whatever, 10,000 plus. And they don't reuse their list. They're just like, oh yeah, I had a Facebook ad, I got a sale, and then that's it. And they're not using maybe OTN or text message, or you can even use email. It's not my favorite thing to use with ManyChat, just because they don't have the best deliver rate, or, like, I should say, not deliver, but the inbox. So it doesn't always hit the inbox. It usually goes in the junk folder. But again, like, there's just so many capabilities that it's kind of up to, kind of, I want to say, the ManyChat, like the builders, to really implement, because the sellers, as much as they want to be creative and stuff, sometimes they just get kind of caught up with the day in, day out of the logistics of just running an Amazon business. So um, really look into doing more with your audience and running internal giveaways. I know Troy touched on that, and that's like one of the biggest things that I don't particularly talk too much about, just because it's been, it's like the difference between um, A and B seller. One seller really knows how to use their audience. The other seller is just transactional, like Troy said. Um, Seller A is just going to have a huge advantage because they can reuse that audience, and you can do it for so many things. Like, refer a friend. Leave me a Facebook review. Like the page, do this, and leaving Facebook review actually kind of helps you, because then it makes your page look more legitimate, and chances of you getting banned down the line are dropped a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to, change the world and you'll never get banned again, but it just, like, Facebook will look at that and be like, oh, okay, maybe they are real. So yeah, just there's so many different things you can use the audience for, and it's extremely difficult to do that with like another platform, like a landing page, for example. So okay, could you please clarify? Okay, so the kind of role that I think Seller.Tools plays with ManyChat is that we're the tool that basically is automating everything from a seller standpoint when they're using ManyChat. So we make sure that you can verify the order. We make sure that you can pull up all the address, all that kind of information, how much they paid for the product, so on. So it just really automates the process. Like, back in the day, the old process of kind of running ManyChat and rebates was you would capture their PayPal, and then you would issue the rebate via PayPal. Somebody would go in, maybe they would do a bulk upload, or they would do it one by one, which is something I remember doing. And Seller.Tools just automates the full process from verifying the order to issuing the gift card. And there are obviously a lot of other things like having the blacklist, having a counter, and so on. So I would say the big role for Seller.Tools, if I could just kind of simplify it in like kind of 1 or 2 words, is just automation. Um, and that's, I don't know if Troy wants to have his spin. Yeah, I think he does.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I think automation for Amazon sellers is where we tie into ManyChat. But the list is long for how that shows up in terms of features.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you were to just one word, automation, and then there's just a lot of things that it can do. And obviously we utilize ManyChat to help us automate things as well. Because I mean, imagine setting up a Facebook ad and saying, "Oh, message this thing," and then you have customer support messaging throughout the journey. That would take hours. So ManyChat is obviously a good way to automate things as well, but Seller.Tools just takes it to the level up of like automation, right? It's like, if there was like levels to it, it'd be like level 1, ManyChat automation, level 2, Seller.Tools automation, and then level 3, I don't think exists yet. But who knows? We'll probably be there too. So there it is.
Awesome. Cool. Well, great. Well, I just wanted to thank all you guys for joining us. I would love to be able to see all your beautiful smiling faces, but I'm glad to see some names that I recognize and some new names. So definitely welcome for all those that joined, and hopefully we'll see you again here soon. We want to keep doing this, and thank you, Tyler, for the value, the walkthroughs, the questions, the answers, all of that good stuff. I think this is going to be really great to continue on, and I'm excited to do it. So
Yeah, for
appreciate
sure.
y'all being here.
Yep. Okay, so I think I stopped recording, or I stopped screen sharing, but yeah, I think that's it, guys. Thank you for coming, and we'll definitely have this next week, and maybe we'll talk about internal giveaways or something else. I'm sure we'll come up with a topic, but yeah, that's it.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Mm-hmm.